Welcome to the Natural Order Podcast with your hosts, Ryan O'Leary and Adam Heyman. Natural Order Podcast, back with you. Ryan O'Leary and Adam Heyman.
Hello, Brian. How you doing?
Hello, Adam. Decided today we'd talk it's on the tip of everybody's brain, the Trump tariffs. Wrote a Substack on this. You can find it at briand'oleary.substack.com on the 29th. I don't know when this will be coming out. So 29th of April came out.
Did you say tariffs, Brian?
I did say tariffs.
I thought for sure we're going to talk about those 7 lady astronauts. I need to go grab a dictionary and figure out what a tariff is.
Yeah. Well, you seem to think, and the libertarians think it's their taxes, which indeed they are. But we can get to that in a bit.
Well, first lay out you wrote an article, and I thought it was a good one. At least laid out a vision of why people are so, gung-ho for them. And I thought that was a vision worth laying out.
Here's the thing. I don't know that they are. I don't know that people are gung-ho for tariffs. They are gung-ho for whatever Trump's message is.
Okay.
That's what I believe. And I have seen over the years that I've been studying this, I think that if there's going to be a tax, and we can stipulate that tariffs are a tax, I will certainly do that they're better than income tax. That's not necessarily the argument that's on the table, but
just to plant my flag, I agree. Obviously, if that were a thing, we could replace one with the other. I'd happily abolish the evil that is the IRS for the lesser evil that is a tariff.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and we'll get to that as I lay my vision out, as you say. So my first salvo. So what happened on, when was that? Tuesday morning. One of the first bits of news that I saw was the Trump White House, I should say, calling Amazon a hostile and political act for they supposedly decided to display the costs of the tariffs in each of their product descriptions on their website. I was hunting around. I was going back and forth with you too, and I never saw that.
Yeah.
I think this was something that they said was going to happen. I think it was perhaps a trial balloon to see if this would go and see if the Trump administration would bite or how they'd play ball. I'm not sure what the tactic was with Amazon. It sounds like they're not going to do it. From everything that's come out in the last 36, 48 hours or whatever.
I think you're right that in the big picture, it was a trial balloon floated by Amazon. But here's something I found that sheds a little light. Some reporter from the Epoch Times emailed him about the subject and got this response from Amazon spokesperson Tim Doyle, quote, "The team that runs our ultra low-cost Amazon Haul store," I do not know what that is.
Okay, I can shed a little light on that when you're done.
"Considered the idea of listing import charges on certain products. This was never approved and is not going to happen," unquote.
Okay.
But I agree with you that I think that if nobody had said anything or if it had been a positive response, they probably would have.
So I'm not anti-Amazon, number one. I mean, I'm not. I think Amazon does wonders. But as far as a consumer goes, I think,
me too.
Yeah. So, but Amazon Haul is this super low cost. I wish I could show you. I don't have anything around here, but low cost tchotchke items.
Is that their version of like Temu or whatever it is?
I think so.
Okay.
So what I did is I got, and it's on my computer, you can't see it, but like I got little stickers that have shortcuts for the commands that I'm always having to look up on one browser. And like, I just need that. So it's a sticker. And I got my son, my soon to be 8-year-old son, one for, to put on his desk. And so he doesn't have to keep asking me or figure out what the shortcuts are. I got a couple other just random things that cost me $1 or $2, and I got a T-shirt that was very expensive, cost me like 14.99. So, but the thing was, you had to order up to $25 worth of items to get the free shipping. Otherwise, it would cost you shipping. So I had to, like, just grind it out, like, what stupid stuff do I need to make 25 bucks? I finally got there, like, 25 and change or 26 and change, and I'm like, "All right, free shipping," and I wait, I wait. Oh, expected this stuff's gonna be expected in, like, 2 weeks. Well, you look and it hasn't yet shipped, hasn't you can check on Amazon, it hasn't yet shipped. Finally, I check on when the heck is this shirt gonna come? I was only concerned about the shirt, and it was just like a shirt that I can wear outside in gardening and just SPF 50. That's all. That's long sleeve. That's
Gotcha.
all I wanted. All right. And so then I check and it said, "Oh, coming from such and such place, comma, capital C, capital N." I'm like, "What the hell?" Oh, it's coming from China. This whole package is coming from China, and I don't know if you can see it, like, but the whole package was about the size of a little notebook with a little depth to it. So what's happening is like these items were essentially no tariffs because they're or even if there is a tariff on a dollar item, they're paying less than a couple cents. I think 2.5% at the top rate China's paying on tariffs anyway. So that's the reason this Amazon haul thing is so so cheap. But I think as we speak, or maybe it's at the end of the week or early next week, these tariffs are supposed to kick into gear. So this stuff that would cost me $1.09 might be $2.24 now.
Mhm.
Now you do that over the course of the whole website. What I don't need a little stupid sticker that bad. No matter if they come in packs of 3 or whatever. I don't need it that bad. So they're, I think, rightfully afraid that their commerce is gonna slow way down. So I think the retaliatory act or somebody within Amazon, and it made news that they were gonna put these notices on there that was, a hostile and political act, as, the White House message said. So, but anyway, my point with writing this article was that we're finally seeing what tariffs can do. And to be fair, and I think I've said this, I don't know if on this show, but definitely in my writing, I'm not pro tariff, anti tariff. I'm not necessarily pro Trump, anti Trump. But I think what these tariffs are doing, because just like you, tariffs is tax. I want their taxes. I don't want them. But the tariffs are a necessary response to the decades that China has spent, with their unfair trade practices. It costs American goods, like something like 25% duty to get into the Chinese market, and the Chinese, cost them 2.5%. That's 10x. And they China needs our markets more than we need their markets. So that's the first point. I don't know if you have anything there.
I'm gonna let you continue on. Just quickly, I'll just say that we're sort of talking about China only, I think, today, rather than tariffs more generally.
This is specifically a Chinese,
Yeah.
uh, trade. They call it a trade war. I'm not sure that it is, but whatever. I mean, you could stipulate that it's trade war, fine. Let's define that later, but I don't know.
I'll take a moment here to plug 2 Human Nature episodes. I hope we'll put them in the show notes. But if you just search on my YouTube channel, Human Nature, put it in quotes, or you'll get a Michael Jackson video. And put in tariffs. I did 2 podcasts with economist Bob Murphy. If you want to get into the
Mhm.
nuts and bolts of how an economist thinks about these things. And then, yeah, I'll just let you continue, Brian. I have a few objections, but I'd rather you lay out what you think has gone wrong and why tariffs are an appropriate response and where you hope to end up after
So what yeah,
things happen.
one of the first things that came out, in the rhetoric anyhow, that Amazon was being transparent with these, or would be, if these prices came on, would be transparent in saying why their prices have gone higher. And to the Trump White House's credit, that is a political act. It's not transparency.
Correct.
It's just not. It's totally political. Being hostile, I mean, we can quibble there, but it is definitely political. But the what it does, the Chinese tariffs here are, specifically as they apply to Amazon, it really undermines the national trade policy of the Trump administration, and puts Amazon's profits up here ahead of national trade policy. Now, some people don't care. They frankly don't care about U.S. trade policy or any other nation's trade policy. So that's one point. Amazon's stock quickly dropped that morning, dipped at least 2%. I haven't checked it lately, but in 3 hours it had dropped 2%. So my contention is I don't care. Uh, but if if Amazon stock dips, if they're no longer importing stuff from China, if China doesn't have as much of an access to the US market, that's that's better for Americans because we need to make stuff in America to be self-sufficient as a nation. That means more factories can open or reopen, more textile mills can get going and produce domestically. But not everybody believes that message. I think in
Hmm.
the libertarian world, uh, you have, like, you would say, you would started saying, like, oh, if we could put a tariff down, get rid of the income tax, we'd be all for that. It's not a one for one. That just doesn't. It's just not one for one. There's incentives that would cause people to do different things, just like with the income tax. People work more or work less. But anyway, my point is, when America was started, the founders established the biggest free trade zone the world had ever seen, and that was
Hmm.
within the boundaries of the United States. So before, you had, Virginia would tariff goods from Massachusetts. They hated each other. I mean, if you ever read David Hackett Fisher's Albion Seed, these people absolutely hated each other. It goes for every state.
Yep.
And so the Constitution forbade still tariffs between states within the United States. They do not forbid tariffs, uh, to for on foreign nations. And frankly, pre 1913, when the income tax was put in, the tariffs funded about 90% of the United States government historically. There was a bit of an income tax during the war between the states, shall we call it? But now we have the income tax and we still have tariffs. Tariffs have gone down significantly from when, they were the major revenue source. But it's still, you have income tax, which there's a perverse incentive there for the government, because that funds that funds this warfare welfare thing, the guns and butter that Ron Paul used to talk about all the time, and that's the funding mechanism for guns and butter is the income tax. Um, and we all hate that, I think.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I will pause there if you have any.
Yeah, I wanna push back on a couple things. The first is, well, let me bring up the good old days when almost everybody who lived in this country worked in agriculture.
Mhm.
And then through a process of capital accumulation and invention, you get a situation where that hardly is the case anymore. It's almost flipped on its head, where 90 some percent used to work in agriculture and now it's like less than five because a combine thresher or whatever that big, huge thing is one guy can do the same amount of work as 1,000 guys with scythes and burlap bags. That's a sign of progress that we have less people doing that, freeing up those people to go do something that's worth more to the American public or whoever else. And the reason I bring that up is because when people talk about the decline in American manufacturing, I think they sort of think that American manufacturing is down, and it's not. It goes up every year, except for maybe what they did to us over COVID. What has gone down is employment in manufacturing, just like on farms. With capital accumulation technology, our workers are very, very efficient. It just takes less of them to make what we want to make. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm making the case for you
Well, when
shouldn't
you're
think that.
when you're offshoring jobs that were
Right, right,
traditionally
right.
American jobs where you have this NAFTA, GATT, all these things, those just wiped out towns
Yeah, I'm getting to
and
that.
cities.
You're absolutely right. I think that our economy got hollowed out and a bunch of jobs got shipped overseas, and it was a travesty. But I am constantly being victimized by my own government.
Well,
And it
that
seems
yeah.
kind of weird that they're always trying to get me to hate China instead of them. And this is a perfect situation for that. It was not the free market and greedy CEOs that shipped jobs overseas. It wasn't NAFTA. It wasn't any of these trade agreements. What it was the government coming along and mandating minimum wages, massive red tape regulatory schemes, Byzantine protocols for how you have to follow the rules. They made working and producing in America so difficult and so expensive that it shifted us towards automation. Think,
Yeah.
from the elevator operator to the theater usher to the clerk at McDonald's, it's all done by machines now. And some of that is going to be a natural outbreak of just increased prosperity and technology, but some of it is the fact that our government is making American workers not attractive to employers. So that if they can't automate, then they'll ship it overseas to take advantage of labor that's become so cheap that even in the face of these
Do you not
massive
think do you
shipping
not think that
costs.
these corporations are behind some of these rules?
Yes, yes. But they needed the government to do that, didn't they?
Yes,
It
they
was the
did.
government that did it.
Right, but yeah, in concert with some of these, bigger corporations that would had no compunction to say,
Absolutely. If
I'd
you're
rather
looking
go to"
around and the government is screwing you and you can't figure out why, it's probably some crony political interest
Yeah,
or, corporate interest, probably.
yeah.
That said, I do think that the Chinese government is atrociously evil, and I wish we had far less to do with it. We learned during COVID that our supply chains are really, really brittle, and we're still like worried about what happens if the Chinese government decides not to sell us pharmaceuticals anymore. Like we forgot how to make them. And there's a essence of what your piece was, where we are becoming hollowed out in our ability to make things and be. I don't want to be self-sufficient exactly. That's not smart, but we have become brittle and weak. And I hope that our companies bring that supply chain back from the eastern hemisphere, at least into the western hemisphere. I think that would be smart. I hope that is something they realized. And you mentioned unfair trade practices. I hate what they do. I hate how they made Tom Cruise take that Taiwan patch off the back of his leather jacket
Right.
because,
Well,
you
the
know,
other thing I was thinking because you sent me a thing about and I didn't get to it, but the whole movie industry.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they what they do to
When I think
kill
about I
our.
think about this they did a reboot. Now it's several years ago, maybe a decade or more now, of Red Dawn.
Right.
They filmed the entire movie, then in post-production, they had to go change who the villains were
Because it was
because
supposed to be the
China
Chinese government, and they wouldn't have it. No,
changed
they'll
it to North
pretend
Korea or something.
pretend the Kims in Pyongyang can go invade Kansas. Make North Korea make sense.
Right. And yeah, so yeah, that's
So I hate that. I hate that Hollywood bends the knee. If you want to talk about greedy corporations doing unethical things, Hollywood is at the top of the list as far as I'm concerned, and the NBA isn't far behind. I despise the CCP. I really, really, really do.
but
But
my
the
okay,
reason
so
we're in
I'll
bed
push
with
back
them,
really quick on Hollywood because they're doing a lot of this very similar things that we're talking about of these other big corporations offshoring or moving jobs elsewhere. There's hardly any movie stuff done in Hollywood, in LA anymore. If it's in the United States, it's in Georgia or, one of these other states that has these huge tax benefits for
you know,
these movie production companies to come in and film their movies there. Meanwhile, in California, they're just trying to peel every single cent they can off all their citizens and all their corporations. And so to your point, it is it is the political acting that is causing these shifts, but they're happening so rapidly. It's like, okay, well, I want movies back in Hollywood. Well, a lot of things have to change. Gavin Newsom has to be shown the door. All these, the entire Sacramento infrastructure needs to be. Well, I can't say it too loudly. What needs to happen to them?
they
But
made
but
it so you couldn't even sell fire insurance in that state, and then mismanaged the wildlands, the grasslands so much that the whole state burns every year, and you can't even get fire insurance for it. It's so mismanaged, that state. He wants to be your president in a couple of years.
good grief. Yeah. So anyway, I think that if we can start building things, making things once more in America, we're better off. The counter to that, and you mentioned it quickly. You say you don't think that self-sufficiency, economic self-sufficiency, is necessarily good, or I mean, is there maybe neutral value? I have no idea um, how you come down on that, but Ludwig von Mises, I think talked about it. I think he called it autarky in Human Action. He didn't care about economic self-sufficiency. He's not, but he was also not an economic nationalist, economic patriot like I am.
Right. Well,
So
I
his
mean,
was
we
more
could
academic and in theory than me. I'm talking about real people and real problems that the people of America are having because of these government mandated free trade and corporations offshoring all the jobs and goods. Anyway, I'll turn it over to you.
well, generally, the way it works as far as employing the employer-employee relationship is, if things can be made cheaper by automating or finding cheaper labor, that frees that labor up to satisfy the infinite human demand for labor because we just never run out of things that we want. And if there is a free market involved, that makes you more productive, obviously. But I mean, there are considerations. Some people think tariffs are smart because we have a national security interest in being able to produce microchips and steel and whatever the hell it is. And
Yeah,
I'm somewhat
there's a
sympathetic
couple
to that
spots in
argument.
the United States that still make microchips. You have it west of
True.
Portland
Yeah.
and around the Boise area. Those are the only places I know of. They spend billions and billions of dollars every few years and it used to be down here in Silicon Valley where they were make them too, but I don't know that they do that anymore. They costs are prohibitively expensive to do that here because of real estate and all that jazz. But,
Well, anyway, I bring it up because people often say that that's a good reason to have tariffs, and it just isn't. If your point is that you need these products for national security, then you use, you know, purchasing policy and law. A tariff isn't going to get you where you need. What if the country that wants to take you over militarily in 10 years just decides to eat the tariff, to hollow you out and make it so you can't make battleships or tanks or jet aircraft or whatever? I'm not that sympathetic to the defense argument because we almost never practice defense. What we had
Mhm.
was a globe spanning military empire, and I don't think the things we're making are being put to good use. And I wish they worried about starting wars and what that would cost, rather than just plunging headlong into each stupid trap out there in the Middle East and Eastern Europe and the
Yeah.
Pacific Rim
I
and
mean,
elsewhere.
yeah, but if we're gonna call it a trade war, which a lot of people have, I think that tariffs are a defensive measure, against, say, China in this case. They don't believe in free trade at all.
Well,
Uh,
countries don't buy anything. I buy things. You buy
well,
things.
yeah,
If the Chinese government sees itself as all of China as one actor, well, that's their business. But what's happening here is people in and companies buy parts to assemble and pieces of components of things they make and goods directly. Countries don't buy anything. Excuse me. And the reason I bring it up is because I don't think the concept of a trade war makes any sense whatsoever. If we are, if they're giving us, the old the old slogan from the 80s, if Sony wants to give us TVs and accept these green pieces of paper that aren't worth anything, are we really being harmed by this? The only argument that even sort of makes sense is if they want to make us so docile and unable to build anything that they're going to conquer us in a handful of decades or something. But I don't see that happening. I think people I think Trump views this as some sort of a game where the balance of trade payments is the scorecard or something. And I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever. The most nefarious thing I've heard people accuse Japan and China and Japan before him is taking the dollars that we give them for the goods and services provided, most of the goods, is that they go buy real assets in America, and that's awful. They're buying farmland, we can't have that, or they're buying our debt, and then they have political influence
they're
over us.
buying up my
Well,
entire
we are.
neighborhood is what they're doing.
You're right, but if that really becomes a problem, excuse me, such to the point that we're worried about it militarily, all they're really holding is a piece of paper, right? That's just a deed. You know, we could always nationalize whatever it is that they bought if this was a war problem.
Yeah. You
You know, it's not only for Panamanian, South American countries nationalizing nationalizing privately owned goods. So I'm just not worried about it. I think people are really upset because the American way of life is feels like it's being taken away from them, and they don't know who's doing it to them.
you
And
mentioned
my
this.
argument is that the problem is coming from within the House. It's Washington D.C. screwing you up and
Okay.
making it so you can't produce anything, and so you feel hopeless and like there's no point getting up out of bed and you have no purpose. That is not China doing that to you. They
You
are
mentioned
taking away that Taiwan patch, or was it? It was Taiwan, right? It wasn't the.
I think so because that was that's the major, or I wouldn't say major adversary, but that's the major political.
Scorsese made this brilliant movie, and they got Hollywood to tank it in the '90s. What was it called? Kunlun or something?
uh,
That wasn't the name of it, but yeah, that country is evil. I don't want us to be doing much business with them, but I don't want my government being the one that makes that call and taxing us into oblivion. And again,
you mentioned the scoreboard or the scorecard
yeah,
that
yeah.
Trump may or may not be keeping score. Who knows what's going on there? But this this implies that there's a actual game being played, right? So say the Trump administration or any American administration thinks that we're playing by a set of rules that China just doesn't care about. I mean, in the NFL, you need the Raiders and the Broncos to have a rivalry. They play on the field. One team wins, the other team wins occasionally, back and forth, and there's a rivalry. Fans and so forth. The way China plays the game is they don't care about the other 31 teams. They want it, if they just want to declare themselves champions, and they don't need the Broncos or the Raiders to play against. They just take their ball and then declare themselves champion. And I
Well,
think
if it's just
Americans
a
and American government
declaration if it's
is
just a declaration, I don't care. Like, let's talk about what they actually do. They steal IP. They force companies, if they want to do business in China, to hand over their patents, and then they blatantly copy them and produce goods in competition with them. They cuckold Hollywood to make all of their movies worship the state of China to the detriment of the artistic vision or whatever. They do a bunch of crappy things, but I have to ask you, why do these companies do that? You know, they're the
short-term
ones losing
gain,
money. Why
short-term
do
gain.
American companies do that?
It's short-term gain for their stockholders,
I
by and
mean, the
large.
stock market, there is an argument to be had that
It's
the
not that
stock
these are
market,
bright guys, it's just that's what they're acting on this information for profits in the short term. They're not necessarily thinking long term.
right, but the stock market isn't supposed to be a short-term thing. The
It's
stock
not
market
supposed
is
to be. It's
supposed to
not
value
supposed to be, but it
the
is.
stream of cash that comes in over time, uh, and the capitalization rate, whatever the
But
time value of money of
that's economic
anyway.
theory. That's not reality what's happening on the stock
Right,
market
but
every day.
if
We're seeing that.
CEOs are using short-term gain that hurts the company long term, then what you have there is a problem with the management structure.
Sure you
The
do,
owners are not getting their agents to behave in the way they want. It's a contract issue.
right?
And
But
the way you solve that is you don't let them, you don't make the if you're giving them options as part of their employment package, you don't you don't let them mature in a year. They have to stick around for 5 or 10 years or 15. But
yeah,
anyway, I mean, I'm just saying that I think companies were stupid to go to China. Don't get me wrong. I think they were stupid. I want to know why. And I think they were pushed there by our government again with regulations and taxes, minimum wage laws, just all the crap that makes it so hard to be a working business in this country. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to start hating on China because of what DC does.
well, I think you're actually right there. And I have you read if you read Phil Knight's book called Shoe Dog, it's about the whole rise of Nike. And I have a friend of mine who was ironically, as I sit here, did almost all the entire work to destroy or to allow Nike to bypass this Ford-Macumber tariff, which was passed in the 1920s. But as you say, the Washington D.C. in the interim there, they made a bunch of other policy choices and trade choices that was like, dude, all of Nike's domestic. This was Japan, I think, at the time where they were getting their shoes made. They've since changed, but they they were shutting down even in the 70s and 80s, shutting down American shoe manufacturers or where they're making their shoes because they just couldn't afford it. And because the Japanese owned shoe companies were coming in with whatever lower tariff rates than the American companies who were offshoring them, and they were trying to compete just by setting up shop. This is what happens. They're trying to set up shop where they can compete on price. And then the US government is was hammering them for importing their own goods. Meanwhile, they're letting all the Japanese shoes slide through with hardly any tariff revenue on it. It's like, how do you compete against that? Eventually, this got torpedoed, and Nike went on to do its thing, and they were pretty close to not existing for a long time. There were many days in even the early '80s when you saw the ads that they were teetering on non-existence daily.
Wild.
So,
Speaking of Nike, and on a complete tangent, did you see that billboard they put up in London that got them in all hot water?
did not.
It's like, and I might be getting some of these details wrong because the internet is not all that reliable, but apparently, like less than a week after National Holocaust Remembrance Day, and much more closely related to the marathon it just ran, Nike puts up this huge billboard in London that says "Never again until next year," and then paints it blood red and puts the text and the symbol, the Nike symbol, in this inverted black pyramid,
Mhm.
which is the symbol of the government of Hamas.
Oh.
And, never again is a famous, it's what the Jews say about the Holocaust and have for decades. And it was just a weird, freakishly, I mean, you can imagine some 20-year-old who doesn't know anything about anything maybe flying that out there because, hey, it's just because marathons are hard and I never want to do this again, but I'll do it next year. But that had to get signed off on by layers and layers and layers and layers of management, right?
You'd be
This
surprised.
couldn't be just
You'd
an
be surprised.
accident.
Well, you'd be surprised. I don't know, just like you'd think the Amazon's message would have to be signed off by Bezos or somebody
That's
up
right.
there.
Well, I think you're
You had no
right. I
clue.
think I
You had
think
no
it was. I
clue.
think they were fine with it. And if there would had been no pushback, they probably would have done that.
Yeah. Yeah,
And they
well,
would have been lying too. I mean, you could say what the tariff rate is, but you cannot say what what percentage of the price has to do with that tariff, because that has to do with elasticity of demand and what the margins are of the producer and the seller. You
yeah.
cannot
My
say what the percentage increase in price has to do with the tariff.
my friend Hunter Hastings, he has his own podcast you can check out too, but he says pricing is a discovery process, not a setting process,
For sure. For
which
sure.
makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, it just like when you add a sales tax on top of a good. Well, you can say that the sales tax is X percentage of the cost, but the cost would have been could be totally different because there's all sorts of things, like it's a discovery process. What goes into a price? Some goods might cost 2.99. Well, in Oregon, it costs 2.99. In California, it costs 3.48 or whatever it is, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, well, so do I have that price, or do I adjust for the tax, or do I keep the price and just say, all right, they're just going to eat the tax? I have a friend that owns a pizza shop in Nashville, outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and this is not tax related, but it's similar. When DoorDash comes in and say, yeah, we'll take care of your all your menus and stuff, and meanwhile, if they were to keep the same prices as they
Yeah.
have in their store,
Yeah.
they would be paying you to eat their pizza.
That's right. Yeah.
So what they have to do is adjust their prices upward, that on top, so you're paying a lot more probably for
Yep.
the pizza to get it, the convenience of getting it door dashed to your home. So they have wonky prices. Say their pizza is $17 in the store, it's gonna be like 21.14 or some who knows? So you see on these DoorDash and Grubhub and all this stuff, wonky prices that you wouldn't normally see in retail.
Well, you
So
say
this
wonky, but this is the market mechanism for dealing with the fact that you have to pay the driver. I mean, if you want this convenience, it costs something, and they got to figure out a way to make that work. But you're talking about the gas tax situation and all that Byzantine
yeah,
web of regulations and expenses imposed on you. It just makes me think if we just had the goddamn government out of the way, just clear the board of all this mess, we would be living in a compared to what we have now, it would be a
yes,
near
that
utopia.
I don't know about
We're
that, but you're right that we'd have less friction, but the markets can't function. It's certainly not freely when you have a state-sponsored predatory actor on the other hand. So say the United States government was trying to do everything they could for you, me, every United States citizen, every corporation, within their power. You still can't do that with the trade policy that, say, China sets, or you just are not in that market at all. So I think you're right in one sense, because if that were the case, we would not need China. We would be making everything here in our own free trade zone. We have the raw materials, we have the workers, we used to have all the the infrastructure and factories that get built up over the decades and generations. We just don't have that anymore. And the switch, when these trade agreements, these multinational trade agreements get signed, it just absolutely cuts the legs out from under, towns and cities and communities within the United States. And that is just not fair. It is just not fair to Americans. And I don't know that putting it, and this is the other case, putting a tariff, a Chinese tariff, whether it's 145%, 25%, what you choose the number, that might do something. It will do something. The results are not going to be immediate. It's been gutted so bad that it is a generational rebirth that will have to happen, and we have to keep the same track. But if you get, say Kamala Harris and her crowd back in there in 3.5 years, good luck with that. It's back to what it was before and worse.
I definitely grant you it's worse with them in charge than someone like Trump, although I disagree heavily with his tariff policy.
Well,
As
I heard
as I
that.
brought up when I was speaking with Murphy, if he were the kind of wicked politician that could just use them as a threat to lower tariffs everywhere, just globally down to zero, that would be great.
Mhm.
I just don't think he's that in. I don't think he's that smart, and I don't think he views things that way. I think he views himself like a mercantilist.
Well,
And
that's exactly what China is.
yeah, but this predatory thing, it's a phantasm for the most part. Giving us cheap goods is not predatory. There's an old story about I'm going to get the details wrong. Maybe I shouldn't embark. Well, there's a chemicals production plant here in the United States, and someone overseas, Germany, I think, wanted to put them out of business.
I
So they
know the
just started,
story you're talking about. Yeah, continue.
yeah.
Tom
So
Woods
they just
talked about
started
it.
exactly. So they just started cutting the price of whatever it is, bauxite, to the point where it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever for the American company to produce this stuff. So the local company just bought it all. If you want to dump that stuff here at a point where you're making a loss, okay, I got a place I can put it. And we can do that with TVs too, and stickers and crappy little T-shirts. If
Mhm.
we're getting stuff that's produced so cheaply that they're hurting themselves, if they have some sort of long-term vision to become predatory by giving us cheap stuff, that's a strategy that doesn't work. The only way it could work again is if
But again,
we
they need
go, we
access to the United States markets. We don't need a access to their markets. Why are
yeah,
they
again,
why are they taxing American goods 25% and we're letting goods in from China at 2.5?
because there's no such thing as us and them in the aggregate. There's just individual people.
Yeah,
And I don't want my government hurting me because of some scorecard. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. The only I want to give your point as much credit as I can give it, though. I mean, I do sort of worry that I don't want America to be full of people that don't have any, stick to it of us and gumption and the ability to work hard and make stuff. I don't want that to happen. I don't want us to turn into a bunch of Wally spacebound pleasure cruisers, fat and on our floating, deck chair. I want
Mhm.
us to I want us to be innovating in brand new areas, which is what we're doing, getting into financial services and AI stuff. And as you see the as you see the chart of American manufacturing go up, but the chart of production, employment in manufacturing go down, all those people are going into these other more lucrative lines of work. That's what I want to see continuing. It makes me crazy that we live in this non-free market, such that it should be obvious what the right thing to do is, but it isn't, because there's laws everywhere and taxes everywhere and regulations everywhere. And it makes it so, it makes it so confusing that we clamor for more taxes and more laws and more regulations to fix the problems caused by the last 100 years of these things. And I
Yeah.
wish, again,
But
we
it's
could
it's
just sweep the
principle.
board
It's
clean.
principled action really is what it amounts to. And, be that is this one of the problems with all these, when government, you know, gets their nose under the tent, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to come up with a new guy changes the old thing, but he doesn't change it enough. Or he
Right.
changes it, tweaks it in a way that it's just like, "Come on, really? You're doing that now?" And that's what the
The,
history of America has been for the most part. So when do we just say, "Stop," and we
the
just
an
start again?
the
It's
analogy I
short-term pain for
use
long-term gain.
the analogy I use for government regulation is the old woman who swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly, and then it's a spider and a bird and a cat and a dog, and pretty soon she's swallowing the humpback whale in order to try and fix the stupid thing she did yesterday. Well,
Mhm,
you never should have swallowed that stupid fly, you know? Government regulation always creates these, unintended consequences, except some of them are intended. Cronyism is a thing.
mhm,
Every industry worker and owner would like their industry protected at the expense of
mhm.
everybody else in the country. It's short-term thinking, though. It's concentrated benefits and dispersed costs, and that's one of the many, 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 many things that got us into this nightmare to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, to some degree, we're talking past each other a little bit with a little bit of middle ground, but I would just say that we the American experiment is gonna have a hard time surviving if we can't feed, if we can't power, if we can't defend ourselves. And I
You're
think
right.
tariffs are not this rejection of the market. They're about, like I said just a moment ago, they're about saving or re-envisioning the foundation of markets or a market. And I don't know. I think we need American sovereignty and self determination. And maybe to your point, Adam, is that when you have the finger on the scale with the government, no matter who's in charge, I mean, Trump is not his solutions are not a panacea. They they appeal to me because one, Trump has been talking about these issues for 35, 40 years. I've been talking about them for well over 20, 25 years.
Mhm.
That's one thing that drives me away from the libertarian ideology, because I was frankly listening to Dave Smith the other day, and he just flat out said, he said, tariffs are terrible, or I don't want to put words in, but something to the degree, tariffs are a terrible economic policy. It was like, no, no, not really. It is a tax. We don't want tax, but if you're talking about economic policy, that's like I said earlier, it's a principled action to retaliate against China. Of course, like I said at the beginning, I'm not pro-tariff. I'm not anti-tariff. I don't want them. All things being equal, of course I don't want them. I don't want any taxes, you know, bearing down on me that I don't have to pay because some crony in either corporate America or the government is getting a taste.
Yeah, I hear you. I share your vision for a strong, vibrant American society. I think we want it to look basically the same. I love America. I love Americans. I am one. I wish we weren't ruled over by this nation state. I think that's our biggest problem. But given that we are all governed together under one legal polity, I'll tell you, my concern for our future isn't the trade deficit. It isn't China. It isn't even war. I think our culture is so bifurcated. We American academia and media have
Mhm.
trained a whole bunch of people in this country to just despise, you know, a whole bunch of other people in this
So
country.
let's play this experiment. Taking what you said as a truth, I believe it, and most of our listeners believe it, that we are this bifurcated society. Say, all right, just say for the sake of argument, say whatever Trump's policies are, re tariffs, regarding tariffs, will work 100%, no doubt about it. Uh, America wins.
Okay, I'll
You
play
have
this game.
you have 50% of the people that will outrightly reject that
Right, right.
without thinking about it because it's Trump. You flip it the other way with Kamala Harris, say whatever she does. I don't want to talk about her too much, but whoever the next imbecile from that side
Sure.
comes in.
these policies would be defended if they were coming from the other side. It's
Absolutely.
bizarre.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
totally bizarre and I'm not saying that's true, but for the sake of argument, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with this on a whole nother political level. I would not say an intellectual or academic level, because you and I can talk about this on that level. We read
Most people don't.
or listen to things, and most people just hear uh, snippets here and there. Oh, Trump was wearing a color shirt, or his suit was your color shirt that you're wearing. That was offensive. Meanwhile, Prince William's wearing the same thing at the Pope's funeral. It's like, come on, you can't win.
Well, as usual with you and I, buddy, it all comes down to the same thing at the end. Democracy is trash, and we should abolish it.
I agree. We need a monarchy. That's my next salvo to you, Adam.
King O'Leary.
I don't know about that. I'd be
Viceroy.
no, no. The guy with the pen and
Oh, you're the hand. You want to be the hand of
yeah,
the king.
be the hand. I'll be the hand. That's
Yeah,
fine.
that is the power position until you lose your head.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, we've figured this all out. It looks like tariffs are indeed a counterattack on China's economic warfare. And any last words? Leave you.
The call is coming from inside the house. The call and the danger is coming from inside the house.
Perhaps, yeah. So we need more people thinking like me. That's what.
That
And then we
is the natural
change it
order.
all for the good. The natural order. Yeah. All right, my man. Brian D. O'Leary and Brian D. O'Leary.com and Brian D. O'Leary.substack.com for if you want to read more of this stuff from me. HeymanNature.com, HeymanNature.substack.com if you want to do the same for Adam. Like Adam says, his podcast career has taken off, and you get to hear him banter back and forth with Bob Murphy every 7 to 10 days, which is very
It's very, very fun for me. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen,
and
it's
getting
Adam
great
Heyman.
reviews by the people I talk to also, Adam. So
I've heard some good things too. So that's HAMAN, nature. And it's the same on the YouTube channel if you like to see the videos of my show. And then check out my Substack. HeymanNature.com gets you there.
all right, until we meet again.
Take it easy, Brian.
All right, bye. For more, go to naturalorderpodcast.com. And for Adam Heyman's material, you'll find that at heymannature.com. For Brian O'Leary, go to briandO'Leary.com. Sign up on the front page for daily emails. Thanks again.